p.m. That's 876-630-3153 to take your outside broadcasts to the world.
Informative, educational, insightful. Let's talk justice and tackle topics like constitutional rights and reform, domestic violence, rights issues that affect you. Let's talk justice. Every Tuesday, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. on The Bridge 99 FM. Call in, share your thoughts and questions. Be empowered. Know your rights. Let's talk justice. Courtesy of Jamaicans for Justice, JFJ, ensuring access to justice for all.
Justice, justice for all. Justice.
Wow, wow! Yo, this is Baby Shama, you're locked in on The Bridge. Can you hear me? This is my story. This is the Bridge story. Hey, wow, wow!
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion, champion, champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law.
It's Tuesday. It's 1 p.m. So we are on Let's Talk Justice. I'm Jade Williams, the Policy and Advocacy Specialist from Jamaicans for Justice.
I realize it's not a happy Tuesday for Jade, but my name is Michael Jackson, Executive Director.
So this week we are tackling I think something topical. It's been in the news recently. It's on our right to access to information and the implications that might have for governance and press freedom. And we'll be joined later on by Alexis Goff. And we did have an earlier interview yesterday with President of the Press Association, Milton Walker. So we'll be sharing some of that with you.
All right. So before we get into it, just to focus quickly on the week that was. Lots of things happening in the news cycle. Just indicate that Parliament resumes today. You will realize that there was a 1 month break, but they had come back to the House to make some last minute changes to the Appropriations Act that speaks to the budget, the $1.3 trillion budget. And there's some things that we're going to be touching towards the second half of the program. And we're going to do our best just to offer some clarification on that recent court ruling around the extension of the tenure of the Director of Public Prosecution. But before we get into the meat of the matter, last week, the Dominica Court ruled, the High Court ruled that several aspects of the Sexual Offences Act were in violation of different constitutional provisions. For example, freedom of expression, rights to privacy. And we just want to extend our congratulations to Cara Shillingford, who is the attorney who led on the matter. Certainly something that we should be celebrating if we're talking about freedom and the rights of minority groups. I got a question from someone to say why Jamaica can't move in that way. But just to indicate that Dominica, they do not have the savings law clauses as Jamaica, Trinidad, and others do in the Caribbean region. So therefore, it would have been easier for them to have such a constitutional declaration being made, where Jamaica, we are relying on the Parliament to recognize that human rights and the evolvement or evolution of it, so to speak. So we hope that Jamaica will follow in good stead. Just two quick things that really jumped out in the news as well around child rights, Jade. We saw some alarming news coming out where a 14-year-old killed a 15-year-old. There was a shocking video on social media that saw a little girl stomping in the face of another. She's facing criminal charges or the possibility thereof. And again, the 14-year-old is facing, murder charges. And, the violence in schools is something that we think that we all have to really focus on, come together as society, civil society, church groups, social workers in need and so on. But certainly the education ministry must lead the charge, working in greater concert with the National Security Ministry, Justice Ministry, and so on, to have all the organs together tackling this alarming, issue that has been coming to the fore in recent times. And the last thing of concern here last week, we saw a news article coming from the Jamaica Gleaner where a St. James High School student, grade 10 student, was apparently expelled from school because of a few seconds video that was on her social media WhatsApp status of her kissing another little girl. The school principal, Mr. Joseph Williams, apparently exercised no due process, no natural justice, and by the way, the Constitution does provide for these provisions. Breached that child's rights and expelled her from school. That child was at home for several weeks receiving no education because of a principal acting arbitrarily. What was interesting though, following that emergent news, there was an interview that Cliff Hughes did on his program yesterday evening where it came to light that apparently the board chair or the board itself did not sanction the expulsion, and therefore the child is not formally expelled. I never hear any nonsense from I have been on this earth. You have the child sitting at home, but you're saying that the child wasn't formally expelled. But what is even shocking is that that board apparently did not meet or have not met for at least 7 months. You know, these that we're urging the Ministry of Education to look into and ensure that principals, they are not a law unto themselves, and we must ensure that child rights are greater protected. And to that mother, if you need support, please feel free to reach out to JFG and we will see how best we can assist you where possible. All right?
All right. Thank you so much for that, Mikhail. So before we go into the issues, I just want to give us our did you know for today and our trivia question for today. So our did you know / right of the day today is a constitutional right, and it is section 13(3)(d), the right to seek, receive, distribute or disseminate information, opinions and ideas through any media. And our trivia question for today is from the Access to Information Act, and it asks us what section of the Access to Information Act gives us the right of access. So if you get that, if you know that, you can send us a DM on our Instagram at JA for Justice, or you can send us a WhatsApp message at 2397583.
All right, so the right to access to information, implications for governance and press freedom. Now, as Jade outlined, we do have a constitutional right to seek and receive information, and that is so provided for in the Access to Information Act, which was enacted in 2002, and it provides the legislative framework for granting citizens the right to access government-held information, and the government has since taken steps to operationalize the ATI Act. There's an Access to Information Unit that is situated up by the Office of the Prime Minister, and I do have some thoughts on that. And you do have designated ATI officers across the public agencies, all there to ensure that transparency and accountability are fulfilled.
Now, unfortunately, it does experience some deficits when it is actually utilized by the public, civil society, and the press. And there have been concerns about the responsiveness to the requests when they are made to certain agencies, and the information that is being withheld by certain agencies, and the reasons for withholding that information. Now, the delays do not seem to have their reasoning aligned with the reasoning that is allowed for in the Act. So these concerns were recently reignited when the Jamaica Gleaner would have made several requests that were denied on what seems to be a legally unsound basis.
Now, it's a couple of things to point out, just to remind the listeners that following the delay in the Auditor General's report, it came to light that the Tax Administration of Jamaica had leased some buildings, close to $400 million that were never occupied. The Jamaica Gleaner had sought initially just simple questions being raised by the press, and the TAJ responded citing the Data Protection Act as the basis for denying that access, and we do have thoughts on that. Also to indicate that over the years you have had agencies including JFJ, JAN, Jamaica Environment Trust, and Alexis Goff, who will be joining us, who have made ATI requests, and we have seen complete reductions or people not providing information, citing things like confidentiality of why certain information can't be provided. So, yes, the ATI Act is long overdue for review, and there are some major challenges within the framework, but we're going to be asking the question, what are those challenges, and how can those challenges be addressed through a review? But Jade, you're going to be leading us through that pre-recorded interview.
Yes, so we did have Mr. Milton Walker, who's the president of the Press Association of Jamaica, and also a journalist in his own right. And we asked him several questions related to access to information and freedom of the press. Now, the first question that we asked was, what ease of access is there from the PAJ's perspective? So we'll play the first clip.
It's a mixed picture. Certainly from my experience and from what I gleaned from my colleagues here in my newsroom and from other newsrooms, there's some agencies, some ministries, some departments that are quite fine. They'll give you respond to you in a timely manner, and they'll give you the information. There are others though who seemingly either run the clock down to the 30 days to respond and then ask you for an extension, and essentially just using all the stretching the limits of the act before they respond. And some just also don't answer. You have to be following up with them, I did file this request and notice you haven't responded, and like, oh gee, I forgot. So that's been the experience. I know that I could say safely has been the response to journalists when they have been filing access to information requests.
No, when I was discussing this with Mr. Walker, it was clear to me that we have had a similar experience that he was describing, where it's asked for the extension period is over. If you're not repeatedly following up, they'll be silent.
Nothing at all, because we're still waiting on the Ministry of National Security to fully respond to ATI requests that we made, February of 2023?
Yes. So there is that aspect. From our perspective in our work, we've seemingly picked up something of a pattern in terms of which requests are easily acquiesced versus which are not. And I asked Mr. Walker about that, and this is what he had to say. Second clip.
It's difficult. I know, for example, a few years ago when I did an access to information request on the government ministers' phone bills, the Ministry of I think it was Science and Technology and Energy, they were the most efficient on each occasion. They responded within the 30 days, actually with information, from my recollection. Other ministries and departments took different times before they, somewhere like 6 weeks, 2 months. But it varied. I don't know if I can establish a pattern, but I must single out that ministry. It sticks out in my mind as one that was very efficient in responding to our requests.
Now, we did probe directly the issue of the gleaner that we mentioned just now, related to seeking information from the tax administration division and the response that they received. So we asked for PAJ's perspective on the response, and that's the third clip.
Well, I'm actually alarmed at the THA's response.
Suppose, for example, there's a company that has an interest which
disclosed. That cannot be. That's just not acceptable in our view. Anything where the public's resources, public funds are being used, we, the public, must know who we're spending that money with, who owns it, and what company, who is behind the company. That's clear. Suppose, for example, there's a company that has an interest which the owners are people who the members of the public will find objectionable to. For example, just being stretching the argument. Suppose there are some members of the Ku Klux Klan and they decided to buy into a company, and then somebody in the government is going to do business with them. No, we would like to know that members of the Klan own that company. That can't be shielded under the Data Protection Act.
If you're in business, get up.
We are up on our break, but we do have one more clip from Mr. one more clip from Mr. Walker that we'd like to talk about related to freedom of the press as a right in the Constitution. So we'll take the break, and when we come back, we'll do that.
If you're in business, get on the bridge. 876-669-5000. If you're in business, get on the bridge. 876-669-5000. If you're in business, get on the bridge. 876-669-5000. Call now.
KFC hot wings, a wing for the win. From your taste one wing, there's just no stopping. KFC hot wings, it's finger licking, spicy or barbecue. Which one you picking? Good for have on the go. Any flex, any link, best wing. Best believer, we said the thing long lasting flavor. We stay within KFC hot wings, a wing for the win. KFC hot wings, delicious, irresistible. Enjoy a 10-piece combo or 25-piece party bucket today in hot and spicy or spicy barbecue. KFC hot wings, a wing for the win.
Your taxes hold.
Property owners, let's get digital. Property taxes for 2024-25 are due April 1. Payments can be made by April 30 in full, half-yearly or quarterly installments. Pay using these options online at jamaicatax.gov.jm, the TAJ mobile app, the mobile tax collection unit, NCB online banking, and Scotia online and mobile app. Call 888-TAX-HELP, that's 888-429-4357, or visit jamaicatax.gov.jm for details.
It's the bridge.
99 FM.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, the people demand. Right to life and security.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. We have been discussing the right to access to information, or rather, you've been hearing some of a discussion I had with Milton Walker, the president of the Press Association of Jamaica, on access to information and the experience of the Press Association. So we do have one more clip that I wanted to play from Mr. Walker, and it relates to the right to freedom of the press. It is something that several persons, including JFJ, would have called to see in the Constitution, and we asked for the Press Association's opinion on that.
We support that. That's definitely something. It's, for example, enshrined in Trinidad's constitution and in other countries. So there's precedents for it in a CARICOM country. And yeah, we believe that it should be enshrined in our constitution as one of the fundamental principles, like freedom of speech. We don't believe that freedom of speech covers press freedom alone. We want press freedom to be specifically enshrined.
And that was Mr. Milton Walker, president of the Press Association of Jamaica. And I think we are now joined by Mr. Alexis Goff, who is a human rights and child justice advocate who has several experiences with trying to access information under the Access to Information Act of 2002. Mr. Goff, can you hear us?
Hey, yes, good afternoon, Michael. Hey, Jade.
Hi, Alexis. Afternoon.
So, first things first, give our listeners an idea of your experience in the ATI Act. What kind of information were you seeking, and how was that responded to?
Sure. Well, first, pardon my manners. Good afternoon to the listeners as well.
Yes.
Journey with using the Access to Information Act was while I was at JFJ, as a matter of fact, on the board with the Child Rights Working Group that we had formed, and the creation of the Lift Up Not Lock Up campaign, which was to called for, demanded the end of the practice of caging children in adult prisons, in police lockups, and for the end of uncontrollable. And one of the things that I found in the research, in doing research and going through the archives, is that it was quite hard and difficult to paint the picture using data from the state about exactly how what the situation was. So we found it hard to create this campaign if we didn't even really know what we were talking about and the scope of it. So that led to several requests around monitoring of number of children in police lockups, in adult prisons, number of children locked up for the charge of uncontrollable, and also the conditions that they were in. Not only just the number of children, but reports of human rights violations as well. And as I heard it being discussed, and you guys talked about earlier, we went through a lot of those challenges of the relevant agencies, waiting us out, trying to we just taking a very long time to respond, or ignoring our constant reminders, and kind of wait, depending on the passage of time, to get us to give up, kind of thing. And we were determined not to. And so we eventually got a lot of information, which uncovered a lot, which was the fundamental basis of the campaign, which we created our demands on. And in that uncovering was making things that had been invisible before, not invisible to those who are directly affected, so children, their families, and staff and public officials who work in those spaces, but to the public, to us, understanding fully what the situation was. So it uncovered the large number of cases of children who were in police lockups and in adult prison. And not only that, but we also uncovered the average time that their children would stay in police lockups and adult prisons for. And that was consistently a violation of the law. Violation of the Bail Act, violation of the Child Care and Protection Act. So it was from then, which is around 2011, 2012, that has started my experience using the Access to Information Act, and was overall a very useful experience, because in fact that led to this campaign, which was successful in ending the practice, shutting down a child prison, shutting down Fort Augusta, and also ending the practice of children being kept.
Yeah. Thanks, Alexis, because you've mentioned, just the importance of citizens using the ATI to uncover truths and experiences and the harsh realities of vulnerable groups. But, I know you have also led and gone through the appeal process based on the challenges that you encountered. What does the appeal process look like? And, is there a recommendation for citizens?
Absolutely. So the appeals process, in theory and on paper, the spirit of the act is supposed to be a process that is accessible to the average Jamaican, to all of us who does not necessarily have access to legal representation, who might not fully comprehend the legalese of these processes, and unfortunately, that the appeals process has not kind of worked out that way. So there is the issue of the state will always come, or normally comes, loaded with lawyers to the appeals process, which is can be very intimidating for the petitioner, for the person who is carrying out the appeals process. The Gleanham, on the other hand, or other media entities, might be different, and so I would definitely encourage journalists, media entities to persevere and go through the process. But the other aspect of or the weakness of the appeals process is that it's not. Whereas other aspects of the act are defined by, guided by timelines, the appeals process is not, other than making the appeal. And so once the appeal has been registered, there is no process for the unit to then come back and say, by a certain date, here, acknowledgement of your request, here is the timeline, we'll be you're in such and such in line for your appeal to be heard, and so you can wait several months, several years in order for the appeals process to start. And so a recommendation in there for anyone who is advocating in the hopefully the soon process of reviewing the Access to Information Act would be that there should be a timeline for the appeals process, that the Access to Information Unit and the tribunal has to, abide by after 30 days, that the appeals process should start after 30 days or 60 days. Those are very arbitrary numbers, but that's a recommendation I have. But again, that's my major recommendation to people who are at that stage is not to give up.
Yeah.
And to seek support where, if there is support that is needed, legal support that's needed, to seek support from places like Jamaica for Justice in carrying out their appeals process.
Thanks, Alexis. Just very quickly, you were one of the lead individuals on the ATI appeal regarding the Armadale. I can only call it a grave injustice. If you could just quickly walk us through that process, how long it took, if you're able to at this point.
Sure. That started in around 2013. This is the part that I don't like to talk about in the story because I don't want people to feel discouraged, although the story has a pretty good ending. But it started in 2013 with a simple request for the access for the Armadale Commission of Inquiry report of one entity. Did not get that. Said they did not have it. So then I asked all relevant agencies. They said they did not have it. No one said they had anything in related to Armadale. Spoke with the unit. The unit said they will do a government-wide search for anything related to Armadale uprising in 2009. They came back to me and said, we've done a search throughout government. We have nothing. There's nothing to give. Maybe you can contact the commissioner, who was a retired judge at that time, if he has anything, which is ridiculous.
Yes.
So at that point, I decided that I needed to go to the appeals process, and I approached Jamaicans for Justice, which I'm eternally grateful for support, because it was a massive request. In submitting the report for the request for appeal and for help going through the appeals process. And so I believe the first hearing was, I think, in 2015, I could be wrong. And we had a number of hearings that focused on, I think it was 9 agencies, government agencies. And most of the denials for information from the government, once they started to find things, was based on they were saying don't want to disclose private information, sensitive information of public officials. And so this is very important to note for anyone who is interested in learning about any disciplinary matters or anything related to public officials, is that what ended up happening is that the tribunal ruled in our favor by saying that says that you cannot disclose anything that is personal information or is defamatory does not exclude or include information that is disciplinary in nature of public officials. That disciplinary records of public officials are public documents.
Yes.
And so throughout that process, we have now received a lot more information, not everything yet, but a lot more information. But that was a 7-8 year process. And as I said, with tremendous support from Jamaicans for Justice and Daniel Andrade.
Yes.
And so, as I said, encourage anyone who is at that appeal stage, if you do not necessarily have access to that support, please feel free to. Well, I saying this, I do.
Hold that
I
thought,
will
Alex.
give y'all enough work. JFJ, if y'all are accepting, please go to JFJ.
Thanks, Alex. Hold that thought. We just want to touch quickly with you any recommendation for the ATI Act, and I just wanted your opinion on the other side of the break as well around the issue of that child who was expelled from St. James High. We take the break.
Hungry for deals? Get the new Crunch Sandwich Combo from KFC for just $600. A finger-licking good deal. The time by KFC is
29 minutes going up to 12 o'clock.
JampJA.org. Mind the business JA with Jump Online. Are your business? They keep your government in line.
Use the MP tracker. If you watch how them a move, the account meter help them improve.
Take action.
Use the jump tool.
Track your MP cause it work for you. Mind your business JA with Jump Online.
Let's monitor government at JampJA.org. Funded by the European Union and the UK International Development.
KFC hot wings, a wing for the win. From your taste one wing, there's just no stopping. KFC hot wings, it's finger licking, spicy or barbecue. Which one you picking? Good for have on the go. Any flex, any link. Best wing, best believer. We say the thing long lasting flavor. We stay within KFC hot wings, a wing for the win. KFC hot wings, delicious, irresistible. Enjoy a 10-piece combo or 25-piece party bucket today in hot and spicy or spicy barbecue. KFC hot wings, a wing for the win.
One Jamaica, looking at the bigger picture.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We are discussing the right to access information, and we are currently joined by Mr. Alexis Goff, who was just about to give us his recommendations for strengthening our access to information framework, and then we want to ask you about the Montego Bay High School incident. So we'll start with your recommendations.
All right. So in terms of the recommendations, I just want to stress that it is going to be so important for us to fight to strengthen and not weaken this the ATI Act, and which I think it is under threat of being weakened. And so one of the things is we have to maintain the timelines for the requests. Having done access to information requests in other countries, one of the things I appreciate so much about Jamaica's legislation is that it has timelines for which the relevant agencies should, that a lot of times they don't, but should abide by. And that's crucial. I would also, as I said before, include timelines for the appeals process as well. I think that there should be, because of the legal nature now of the appeals process, maybe there could be some legal aid, legal representation that could be offered. I don't know, for individuals going through that process. I do think we need to look at what could consequences be for entities like ignoring or having like unreasonable responses to requests, or just saying, we can't find it, or we haven't looked for it, as has been my case in a few of the requests. And then the last thing I'll say is I think there should be an explicit section about access to information that deals with proactive disclosure. Proactive disclosure means that we're not waiting until somebody, a journalist and a citizen, makes a request to find out the information as a public.
Yes.
It's that the government proactively puts out information that is very important for the public and for communities, residents to know.
Yes.
And I think that should be the default of access to information for Jamaica.
Thanks, Alex. And just to add from our end, because we've gotten reports from civil servants that they have been issued, I don't want to use the word threatened, but they have been issued strong warnings that should they disclose that they would be in breach of the Official Secrets Act, So that is something that we've been calling to be repealed. And then the second aspect of it is that, we have so many thoughts around the Protected Disclosure Act, that's commonly called the Whistleblower Act, wherein, we said to people, before you disclose, ensure that you get some legal advice, because sometimes when you disclose, given the uncertainty in whether or not protection could be offered, you may find yourself in problems with that. So just to add to your recommendations, our little tidbit there. But thanks so much, Alexis, and the ATI. The St. James High student, I'm not sure you saw the reports on that.
I've seen the reports, but I heard you mention an interview, which I have not listened to. I read the interview, which I did not.
Yes, with the Cliff Hughes yesterday evening on Nationwide, and he was speaking to the I don't know what that could mean, but just generally the process that...
Yes, so, well, first, to tie this into access to information again, this could be something that parents, families, staff at schools that want to know. How often are boards meeting, for example? What are the decisions made by boards? What is the process that the board went through in confirming an expulsion or a suspension, as is supposed to be carried out by law and regulations.
And apparently this never reached the board, just to add to that statement.
Right. And so one of the things that I think would come out of, or what we know is that so much of the children that are being pushed out of schools that are so-called suspended or expelled actually did not go through the formal process, did not go through the legislative or the regulatory process in order for their suspension or their expulsion to be legal, I suppose is the right word. And so the schools, the school administration will tend to say, some wild things. For example, they'll say you need to show up with your parent, or your parent, please show up with your child. If you don't show up, your child cannot come until you show up. That's not supposed. That's an unethical practice that is denying a child their access to education, but it is a very common practice that school administrators use. And if we were to dig deeper, and investigative journalists chose to dig deeper into the suspension or expulsion process, my hypothesis is that the vast majority of suspensions and expulsions they do not go through the process that is laid out in law and in regulation and in policy. I'm not saying that that the law and the policy is perfect and great, but it does offer protections and checks and balances, some protections and checks and balances for the child and for the parent and for the families. Yes. In relation to this specific situation, and also speaking as a former full-time guidance counselor in Jamaica, like schools can be some of the most conservative spaces in Jamaica. And so it is also where we see the criminalization of childhood, the criminalization and the demonization of sexuality and sexual expression, the demonization and criminalization of adolescents. And so it is disturbing, even if it's disturbing to find out the school's response, but sadly it is not surprising. And so this is a gross violation of the child and the family's rights to education, the gross violation of their right to dignity and humanity as being a child, and it should be reversed. And schools should be places in which children are safe, are not targeted, right, and are not harmed. And I was very disturbed by this, but not surprised. Also, while I was at JFJ, we had cases uncovered by ATI of suspensions, of detentions of same students. Two boys, for example, this one sticks out with me a lot. Two boys hugging. There was a school that gave a detention, said, "Don't do it again." Boys said, "Are you crazy? What's wrong with you?" And they were caught hugging again. I can't even believe I'm saying that. Hugging. What? Right? And they were suspended. Right? So this is a major. We need in Jamaica a greater push for educational advocacy, for equity in Jamaica, because access to education is something that is seen more as a privilege than a right for our children and families.
Yeah. I'm also disturbed because sometimes we can't take much to, but this was one of them. It angered me and the team here at JFJ, and we're hoping that the mother will reach out and we say how best, because apparently, based on the statements from the board chair, this is not the first that the principal has acted contrary to the board's instructions. And what is sad for us looking on is that apparently the Ministry of Education, through its Region 4, did not act until the matter came to light in the Jamaica Gleaner. Very concerning. But yeah,
I will say this quickly. Like there is also action that we could take before or even without being approached by the families.
Yeah.
Because all of that information, the principal information, school, the board information, one should be on their website. Proactive disclosure of this stuff. One. We should be able to know easily how many suspensions, expulsions go on at that school. There should be a report, about what are the common reasons, all these things. But we should easily have their phone number and email.
Yeah.
And there should be it should be easy to mobilize people, to email, to write, to call, and to say, stop the foolishness, reinstate that child. You know what I mean? Like that is again, I think it's such a good tie to access to information. The lack of access to information means that it can have a detrimental effect on citizens' ability to advocate for ourselves and for others. And the people that, tend to lose out the most from a lack of access, I would say are vulnerable groups such as children. And so, this is key.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Alexis. We appreciate you always. All right, so we take an early break and then we pick up on the next set of things we have to discuss.
Imagine your advertising dollar reaching your Caribbean and diaspora target beyond borders in a single rotation. It happens only on the bridge. Call now to advertise 876-669-5000.
We up, yeah. Free up, yeah.
Calling all bridge builders to the Bridge 99 FM, your global partners for outside broadcasts, connecting you from Jamaica to the world.
Where will we go?
From Kingston to Portmore, downtown, Spanish Town, Canada, USA, and as far as Dubai, we keep you connected across the 7 continents of the globe.
Can I get your number?
Call us at 876-630-3153 for information about partnering with the Bridge 99 FM.
That's 876-630-3153 to take your outside broadcasts to the world.
Yeah, this is Angie from Gardertown. In the square, right at Miss Lou's statue. From Checkout Kentucky Drinking Salon. With the top shelf, look at them. See them like how you see the Bridge 99 FM to the world.
It's Jamaican, it's Caribbean, to the world on the Bridge 99 FM. You heard?
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion. Justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice for all.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We just concluded a conversation on the right to access to information, and we're about to start a new conversation now on the recent judgment in Paulwell and Bunting versus the Attorney General that came down last week, Friday.
All right. Before we even get into the substantive discussion, Jade, I don't know why I keep doing this, but I've been reading some of the unfortunate, I would call it, comments on social media as to why a human rights organization would be speaking on a governance issue. And for our listeners, I want to use this opportunity just to quickly educate and inform. And I hope you won't take offense and would be guided by my well-intended comments. That a human rights organization is there, JFJ, to ensure that the state does not violate any rights that we have as citizens. The states, or this state, which is Jamaican state now, but generally any state whatsoever in any country, has extraordinary powers and authority. These powers and authority are laid out in the Constitution. Jamaica has a written constitution. When states violate their powers and authority, it means that they can violate our more foundational civil liberties and the rights that were hard fought and hard won. Sometimes the rights that we have, for example, Paul Bogle being hanged, George William Gordon being hanged, the labor riots that we had in the 1930s, these rights did not come easily. So we have to ensure that as human rights organizations, joined by citizens of this country, tempers the government when they act outside of the powers and authority in the Constitution. So I want us to look at these matters as not matters of politics, where there's a partisan view attached to it, but as serious governance issues that ensure that the government acts within the remit of the Constitution and acts in a way that respects all of our fundamental rights and freedoms. And I felt compelled, Jade, to just articulate that, because I think there is a real misunderstanding as to these issues, and we lump it up as PNP and GLP issues. No, these are governance matters. Yeah?
Yes, I agree. And I think we do ourselves a disservice when we continue to characterize things in such a way that things that outside of partisan affect have a serious implication for how we will continue to survive in our country.
Yeah, so last year, we saw where constitutionally, by the way, the Director of Public Prosecution, the Constitution says that the position retires at age 60, but it allows for a single extension of the tenure to be done. Now, the Director of Public Prosecution at the time, Paula Llewellyn, had signaled that she would want to continue in office for a period of 5 years, that single extension, that single term, if you will. By the Constitution, the Prime Minister would have to seek some consultation with the leader of the opposition. That was done. The leader of the opposition responded at the time to say, you know what, I don't agree with the 5 years. I agree with a lesser period. And a 3-year extension period was agreed to. And the DPP would therefore demand. It is interesting and instructive to note that the DPP apparently had written to the Public Service Commission asking for a second term, or second extension rather. The Prime Minister haven't gotten legal advice, and that legal advice said no, the Constitution only contemplates a single extension, and the Prime Minister denied that second extension request. Here comes a bill, I believe in July of 2023, that was championed and tabled by Minister Delroy Chuck in the House, that says, you know what, I'm going to be changing the age of retirement of both the DPP and the Auditor General from 60 years to 65 years, thereby, in his estimation, and by the memorandum of objects and reasoning of that constitutional amendment, would therefore allow the DPP to remain in office up to age 65 years. JFJ said no. What you're doing is circumventing the existing constitutional provisions that says you must consult with the leader of the opposition. And if no second extension is allowed, this is what this bill is doing. The Minister of Justice, using the parliamentary majority afforded to the Jamaica Labour Party, bullied I would say, and I make no apologies for that terminology, bullied that bill through Parliament, and the bill was passed in a matter of 3 hours. Here comes the House of Senate, the upper house meeting the same week, and the bill was passed thereafter. The parliamentary opposition challenged that in the courts, and this is why we're here today, because the court ruled, and I want you to be guided here. The court said that the bill, you hear people talking about Section 2.1, which is the section that sought to increase the age of retirement from 60 to 65. That section is fine. And I think we can agree that you would want there to be uniformity in how the age of retirement is. But what is instructive is that the court said that the other section, which is Section 2.2, that, and I'm speaking from memory here, that says that the DPP can choose to elect to retire after attaining the age of 60 years. And the court's ruling is that, 1, the process by which that amendment was made would basically circumvent the existing provisions that would therefore see the Prime Minister acting in consultation with the leader of the opposition, and thereby breaching the separation of powers, which is the parliamentary now, the legislator rather, that would be passing a law that the executive branch, which is the Governor General, the Prime Minister, and the leader of the opposition, would need to consult around and then grant it. So that particular section was deemed by the Supreme Court to be constitutionally null, void, and of no legal effect. Now, people are looking on and say, what's the big deal? Why not allow the DPP to stay until age 65? If we did that, it would be setting a bad precedent to say that if it is that you have a constitutional provision that you must abide by, even with the best of intention, you can't pass a bill with a provision that would circumvent what was there before, that would give the DPP powers that was never envisioned for her to have. So in other words, a future DPP could say, you know what, I don't need to rely on the leader of the opposition and the Prime Minister to grant me an extension. I can choose to stay in office irrespective of whatever provision that existed. That is the danger. And what you also have is that the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution is now mired in unnecessary controversy based on how this particular constitutional amendment bill was passed last year. So we agree with the court's judgment that Section 2.2 is unconstitutional, and we welcome the court's finding in that regard. Now, over the weekend, from that judgment was made to the public, you know, I laughed just now. There have been comments from the Attorney General Chambers, comments from the Minister of Justice saying that, you know, firstly, the Minister of Justice on Friday indicated that, guess what? I'm going to be appealing. The government is going to be appealing this judgment. And we're going to be filing a request for a stay of execution. So in other words, let's delay or continue to have the DPP act in that position while an appeal is going on. Attorneys came out and said, listen, no stay of execution is possible in a declaratory judgment. Then you get another statement now from the government saying, you know what, irrespective of the judgment, because we welcome certain aspects of it, the DPP can benefit from the new age. Then you had another statement following howls of contesting those statements from both the AG Chambers and the Minister of Justice to say that, guess what? We're going to be appointing an acting DPP and then file an appeal. What is the danger here? At this point, we are unsure of the status I don't even know if I should say former, but because I believe that the judgment is very clear, I will use the word former DPP. We don't know where exactly the DPP stands at this point. Because if you look at the language of the press release, it would suggest that the DPP is standing down temporarily until that appeal is pending. Why is that a big deal? If you can't get a stay of execution, what the government is really doing is to circumvent enforcing the court's ruling by having an acting DPP and the DPP, which is Miss Llewellyn, basically standing to one side while an appeal process is going on. Dangerous again. And we would ask the government, from JFJ's perspective, to respect the court ruling, enforce it as it stands. The DPP should signal that she has permanently stepped aside, even while an appeal process is going on. And by the way, while we were on air, we got a notification from the media that the appeal has since been filed today. Yes. But we still don't know where Miss Llewellyn is. I wonder if people following the danger of what's happening. I hope I'm not losing anybody, you know. But what is the grounds of the appeal, Jade?
Based on the release, it seems as though the intention is to appeal what is being called you give me back the exact word. I think it's something along the lines of
harmonization.
Yes. As far as I'm aware, and I am not the biggest legal luminary in the world, so I'm not gonna say that I can't be wrong. But as far as I'm aware, that is not a grounds on which an appeal can validly be filed. Normally, we under our Judicature Court of Appeal Act, there are certain grounds for which an appeal can be filed. That there was an issue with the law, in the interpretation of the law, and so the court erred in that manner, or that there is fresh evidence in a criminal matter, or similar issues like that. But usually, you cannot appeal for a point of clarity. It's not something I have
If the judgment is unclear, then you can go and seek clarity from the courts, but you can appeal on that basis, is what you're saying.
As far as I'm aware, no. The court can certainly interpret its judgment in a clearer manner for the public to understand. Whether that would happen in an appeals process is not something that I am aware of.
Yeah, I think when we leave here, I'm going to be reading it. And by the way, I'm not an attorney, JDs. I'm not. I'm going to be reading that statement a little bit with a greater eye for detail, because I'm uncertain on the grounds of it. But let me be clear as well, and I think people have found this statement contradicting from JFJ. We don't mind an appeal being done. Yes, we don't mind it, because what you need is that the higher courts give finality to an issue.
Yes,
and it guides the Parliament and the executive branches how they are to act and how they are to govern. However, we're saying it's in the public's interest that for now, Miss Llewellyn permanently step aside. And again, for avoidance of doubt and for clarity, this is not a personal attack on Miss Paula Llewellyn. She has served the country well, extraordinary in some instances. JFJ, we've had some concerns with the office over the years regarding how police matters are prosecuted, but that is the nature of the work. You will have disagreements with the offices, and when you do, you file you take the matter to court, and we have done that in the past.
Yes.
So this is not a personal attack on Miss Llewellyn, but we believe that in the interest of justice, and given the importance of that office as a constitutional one, Miss Llewellyn should step aside, and also to preserve her own legacy, because she has done some good things. I said just this morning that she has spoken to the media so eloquently to break things down. She has given written decisions, even though it is not constitutionally required.
Yes.
And that is something that some past DPPs never did.
Even where we disagree, it is good to know the stance of the office and why the decision was made.
Yeah. But we need to be watching it. And by the way, we do welcome the acting DPP, Miss Claudette Thompson.
Yes, Miss Claudette Thompson.
Yes, we wish her the best. But we're still calling for a permanent replacement to be done. But Jade, one of the next thing I want to quickly look, we're going to give us a little bit more time. We're talking about a particular section of the Constitution that says you can do an acting DPP, right?
Yes.
I don't know that constitutional, that section rather, says that you can have an acting DPP because you have an adverse court finding and therefore you're going to be waiting on an appeal to go through. And listen, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I've read many cases and the Constitution itself, and I just can't fathom that is what the framers had intended.
I don't think the Constitution contemplated a situation quite like this.
It's a dangerous precedent.
Yes, it is indeed. It is
very dangerous. So again, government, you're acting in a way that you ought not to before, and now you're doing it again with the court judgment. Respectfully to all involved, do better. Yeah. So, by the way, the House resumes today, and we've made a call for the House Speaker to publicly withdraw that letter that she had shared with the reprimand letter to the former clerk of the House, Ms. Valerie Curtis.
Yes.
We have also called for a public apology. I just can't imagine you're going to be giving the lady tribute while you did that letter in such a public way. It's a conundrum, if you would. And the Integrity Commission reports, there were 5. And we don't know if they're with the Oversight Committee. We trust that's not the case following the ruling last year from the former House Speaker that continues with the current. So we trust that the Integrity Commission report, those will be tabled today, and the public would be aware of the content of those reports, because you can't be talking about transparency and reducing corruption and you don't know what is in it. You don't want that cloak of secrecy to continue. But yeah, those were the substantive things.
Thank you for that, Mikkel. Unfortunately, we have no trivia winner today.
Really?
Yes. I will not give the answer because I will allow until the end of the day for people to continue to try. But if it is that no one gets the answer by the end of the day, I will post it on our Instagram in response to the post. But I appreciate those of you who have tried. Keep trying. The answer is in the legislation. It is not the name of the legislation. So hopefully that will help you to figure it out. But thank you all so much for joining us. I am Jade Williams.
And I'm Mikkel Jackson.
And we'll be back next week.
Jamaicans, for justice, the people's champion. Justice for all, justice under the law, justice, Jamaica demand, right to life, right to liberty. Out of many we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls, created equal by the creator, for equal rights and opportunities, no to unlawful detention and police brutalization, class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or Jamaicans4Justice.org.
The people's champion.
What up, New York? What up, Jam Down? It's The Bridge, 99 FM.
Catch the KFC sponsored hour on The Bridge 99 FM every Friday at 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. in Up and Go to the World.
Tune in, log on and download the Bridge 99 FM app on your mobile device or tablet from the Google Play Store or Apple App Store. That's the Bridge 99 FM, all one word, in the Google Play Store and Apple App Store. The Bridge 99 FM, Caribbean vibes amplified. Download